Welcome, curious minds, to Book on a Shelf. You've handed us a really powerful piece of American history for today's deep dive. We're looking at excerpts from the memoir Farewell to Manzanar by Jeanne Wakatsuki Houston and James D. Houston.
Yeah, this is often called required reading, and you can see why. It's more than just history. It's a very personal, detailed reckoning. And written, 25 years after the events?
That's right. That gap itself tells you something, doesn't it?
Yep.
About the weight of the experience. We're talking about the forced internment of Japanese Americans during World War II.
Exactly. It's heavy stuff.
So our mission today isn't just to recount the timeline. We want to, connect the dots between the sort of cold official government actions and the real lived agonizing experience of one family, the Wakatsukis.
Mm-hmm. Finding those human moments.
Yeah, the aha moments, the cultural details,
Yeah.
the things that get lost in the official reports, what was really happening behind terms like relocation.
And the book throws down the gauntlet right away, doesn't it, with that question?
What if your own government declared you the enemy just because of your ancestry?
It's chilling. So we'll follow the Wakatsukis and, by extension, nearly 120,000 others on that immediate journey, from their homes, their lives, into the dust of Manzanar, focusing on those immediate costs, personal and cultural.
Okay, let's unpack this, starting right at the beginning. The fear, the loss, the declaration of enemy. The sources really start by hitting you with that core injustice, don't they? A government turning on its own people, based purely on where their families came from.
Right. We know Pearl Harbor happened, the U.S. enters the war.
But for Japanese Americans on the West Coast, the fallout was instantaneous and devastating.
And it's crucial to understand the justification given at the time, or the claimed justification. Officials, military, political figures, they stoked this massive public fear.
Saying Japanese Americans were a threat, sabotage, spying.
Exactly, that they'd secretly helped Japan from inside the U.S. This widespread anxiety was deliberately fueled.
But here's the kicker, right? The memoir makes it clear. History confirms it.
Zero credible evidence. None. There was no organized disloyalty, no proof of these supposed plots.
So it was fear-driving policy. Fear and, let's be honest, pre-existing prejudice.
Deeply rooted racial prejudice, absolutely. It wasn't about intelligence, it was about bias finding an opportunity.
And that fear, that bias, it gets formalized very quickly with Executive Order 9066.
Yes, that's the mechanism.
Tell us a bit more about that order. People have heard of it, but how did it actually work?
Well, President Roosevelt signed it in February 42, and on the surface, it sounds almost neutral. It didn't explicitly say Japanese Americans. It gave the War Department power to create military exclusion zones.
Exclusion zones.
Right, and remove anyone from those zones who might be a threat. But then they declared the entire West Coast a military area.
Ah, so that was the loophole.
That was the key. It became the legal cover to round up about 120,000 people of Japanese descent, and importantly, 2/3 of them were American citizens.
Huh.
Born here.
Just swept up and sent to these 10 camps. Relocation centers, they call them.
Misleading term, yeah. These were internment camps, plain and simple. Stuck out in remote areas, deserts, swamps, Arkansas, Wyoming, California.
And the speed of it all.
Yeah.
It meant instant ruin for families, businesses, communities built over decades. For the Wakatsukis, what was that first immediate blow?
The loss of Papa, the patriarch, gone, almost overnight. He was labeled an enemy alien.
Because he was Issei, first generation.
Exactly. The immigrant generation, born in Japan, U.S. law at the time actually barred them from becoming citizens no matter how long they lived here. So he and many other community leaders, priests, teachers, businessmen were targeted first, sent to places like Fort Lincoln, North Dakota.
An all-male camp.
Yeah, specifically for these perceived leaders. The idea was, cut the head off the community right away, remove the anchors.
Which leaves the rest of the family reeling. Suddenly, no leader, no main provider in the middle of this chaos.
Precisely. The memoir shows the brothers, the Nisei, the American-born kids trying to step up. They're described as being like counselors in the absence of a chief, scared, worried, trying to hold things together.
And they'd already been forced out of their home.
Yes, on Terminal Island. It was near naval facilities, so it was one of the first communities cleared out. They ended up temporarily in Boyle Heights in downtown L.A. Got some crucial help from the Quakers, actually.
In the American Friends Service.
One of the very few groups offering humanitarian aid then.
And this immediate crisis, it forces the older generation, the Issei, to fall back on something deep culturally. You mentioned this philosophy.
Yes. Shikata ga nai. This phrase comes up again and again.
It cannot be helped.
No.
It must be done. Something like that.
Roughly, yes. But it's much deeper than just giving up. It's a cultural strategy for facing, well, the inevitable, unbearable tragedy. The older Issei would say it quietly amongst themselves.
So it's a strength, a way to endure.
In one sense, absolutely. It lets you accept what you cannot change, this overwhelming injustice, and focus your energy inward, on endurance, because the alternative, constant rage, futile protest, that would have been psychologically shattering and dangerous.
So it's a survival mechanism. Stop fighting the unwinnable internal battle. But what's the cost of swallowing that kind of injustice, calling it unavoidable?
Well, the cost is silence, isn't it? Swallowed anger. Resignation, maybe. For the essay, who'd already faced decades of discrimination, maybe this felt like just the final, biggest insult to bear quietly. The sources suggest this traditional approach, while maybe saving sanity in the moment, might have made it harder to organize to protest collectively.
Especially for the Nisei, the citizens.
Who felt that injustice maybe more acutely as Americans. It created this dynamic of passive acceptance sometimes. Shikata Ganai becomes this thread running through everything at Manzanar.
So the family is in Boyle Heights, in this limbo, waiting. And the atmosphere outside is just souring, fast. Jeanne, just a little girl, experiences this shift firsthand with her teachers. It's a stark comparison.
It really is. It shows how quickly prejudice became, well, acceptable, normalized. Back in Ocean Park before the move, she had this lovely grandmotherly teacher. The book says she actually cried when the family had to leave. Genuine empathy. Right.
A connection, tolerance.
Then they get to Boyle Heights. Temporary place, new school, and the teacher there.
Cold and distant. Wouldn't even help her with her work.
And Jeanne says that was the first time she felt outright hostility from a Caucasian. That shift. In just a few months after Pearl Harbor, tolerance just seemed to evaporate, replaced by suspicion, fear.
Irrational fear.
Completely irrational, and the book connects it to something older, deeper.
This 100-year-old tradition of anti-Orientalism.
Yeah, decades of it on the West Coast. Laws restricting land ownership, immigration quotas, just constant marginalization. The war crisis just sort of weaponized it, gave it state power, made it mainstream and vicious.
And that hostility, that growing danger outside, it actually leads to this bizarre twist. The move to Manzanar, they felt some relief.
It sounds completely backwards, doesn't it? But yeah, they were hearing stories, homes attacked, people beaten on the street. The situation got so bad, so threatening from their neighbors, that being taken away by the government felt like moving to government protection.
Protection by your jailers. What a choice.
It shows the sheer desperation. Some of the kids, the book says, even thought it might be a fine adventure. They had no idea.
So the journey begins from a Buddhist church in L.A. Mama, always thinking ahead, bought heavy coats. Knew it would be cold inland.
She was the pragmatist. But the journey itself immediately starts the dehumanizing process. The bureaucracy kicks in.
Numbered tag.
Yes. Some official ties a tag to 7-year-old Jeanne's collar, another on her bag. That number became their family's identity. Official designation until the camps were closed. You stop being a person, a family, you're a number. Unit 16, Block 28, whatever it was.
Bureaucratic erasure. And the bus ride itself, shrouded.
Shades drawn for the first few hours.
Yeah?
Hiding it. Shame. Secrecy. Maybe all of the above. But even then, you see the family fighting back, resisting being broken apart.
Right. Mama and the brothers had this strategy.
A really important detail. They worked incredibly hard beforehand to make sure everyone, even siblings who'd married and had different names, was under the same family number. On the same bus, assigned to the same place.
That wasn't automatic.
Not at all. The system would happily scatter families. They had to actively fight to stay together. It shows how vital that family unit was. Their first real act of defiance against the chaos, just keeping everyone together. Many families weren't so lucky, spent months trying to get transferred.
So they ride all day, heading inland to California's Owens Valley. Manzanar.
Yeah.
That means apple orchard in Spanish, right?
Ironically, yeah. But the name meant nothing to them then. By late afternoon, the bus shades are up, and the first thing they see isn't orchards. It's this surreal yellow-red haze.
The dust storm.
The infamous Manzanar dust. Just constantly churning. It wasn't rain, it was sand, grit blowing everywhere, a direct result of LA taking the Owens River water decades before. Turned fertile land into desert. The environment itself felt hostile.
They drive past barbed wire through a gate, see barracks stretching out, mountains in the distance, baggage piled up.
And the mood inside the bus shifts dramatically. People outside staff, maybe, early arrivals, they're smiling. But inside the bus, the Wakatsukis are ominously silent, just staring. That initial relief of escaping LA gone, replaced by the stark reality of this place: barbed wire, barracks, prison.
And it takes Jeanne, the little kid, to break that silence.
Yeah, she just yells out, "Hey, this whole bus is full of Wakatsukis."
And everyone just bursts out laughing.
Hysterical laughter, the book calls it. Tension breaking, a desperate release, acknowledging the shock.
But that shock gets reinforced almost immediately. The first meal.
Yeah.
The culinary insult, as the book puts it.
Oh, this is such a telling detail. Really gets at the immediate cultural clash.
So what happened? What did they serve?
Army-run mess hall, aluminum mess kits. The food itself was grim. Canned Vienna sausage, canned string beans, overcooked rice. But the real offense, the thing that baffled and insulted them, was the dessert. Canned apricots.
Wow.
Poured directly over the rice.
Right. For a Japanese family, that's just
Completely wrong.
Yeah.
Culturally incomprehensible. Rice is the staple, the foundation. It's never eaten with sweet things. Only savory, salty. So this mix was just an inedible concoction. Created out of ignorance by the staff, sure, but it felt like a real slight, ruining the most basic food.
a symbol of their situation.
Yeah.
How did the adults react?
Silence. Total silence. Nobody complained. Mama actually jabs Jeanne to keep her quiet. It shows that immediate pressure. You swallow your discomfort, even your hunger, for the sake of politeness, community harmony. Shikata again. Don't rock the boat. Accept the unacceptable. Prioritize quiet endurance over basic needs.
From that meal, they go to their assigned home, Block 16. And the conditions?
Appalling. Just slapped together.
Yeah.
2 small rooms, 16 by 20 feet for 12 people, made of single-layer pine planks, still green, covered in tar paper, on concrete blocks raised off the ground.
And the problem was the green wood.
Yeah, as it dried, it shrank. Gaps opened up between the planks, not holes in the floorboards. The wind, the dust just blasted straight through, freezing cold at night.
And supplies were bare minimum.
1 bare bulb per room, a little oil stove that barely made a difference, steel army cots, 2 thin brown blankets each. That's it. The book describes the chaos. Newly married couples crammed into 1 room with strangers, arguing for months over blankets used as flimsy partitions, noise, no privacy.
To the point where some people chose to leave for backbreaking farm work.
Exactly. Harvesting sugar beets in Idaho, grueling work, low pay. But the prize? A single room of their own. That tells you how bad the lack of privacy was in the barracks. Designed for conflict, almost.
So faced with this complete chaos, this systemic failure, someone has to step up. And we see Woody, the 24-year-old brother, take charge.
Right. Woody represents that nice-say response, not just quiet endurance, but action. Pragmatism, maybe even a bit of American ingenuity.
Shows up with tools.
Yeah, a broom, a hammer, and critically, a sack full of tin can lids he'd scrounged somewhere. His first move wasn't about feelings, it was practical. Get down on the floor and nail those lids over the biggest knotholes. Stop the sand.
And he uses humor, too, right?
Yeah, threatens the younger boys will have to eat any sand off the floor with ketchup. It shows that resilience, that ability to be crafty, maybe a little whimsical even then. The book links this to his later life, touring as a wrestling assistant.
His sister assistant, Suki, doing karate chops.
Exactly. Always the clever, practical one. Resourceful.
But even Woody's can-do attitude runs up against Mama's despair. Her reaction to the barracks is just raw.
It's heartbreaking. She looks around at the shack, the dust, the gaps, and just says, Woody, we can't live like this. Animals live like this. It's not just about being uncomfortable. It's about the complete violation of her standards. Dignity, cleanliness, privacy, all gone.
And Woody's response? He has to swallow his own feelings.
He has to. Blinks back his own grief, hugs her, makes that promise, we'll make it better, Mama. And he tries, finds scrap lumber. But it takes months for things to improve much. The chaos persists. Open ceilings, boys peeking into other people's lives, constant lack of privacy.
It really underscores that the camp wasn't just hastily built, it was fundamentally broken. The failure was systemic.
Exactly. The phrase used is the camp was no more ready for us than we were ready for it. The whole thing was run by the War Department, and the logistics were just a shambles. Look at the clothing issue.
Oh, right. The World War I surplus.
It's almost comical if it weren't so humiliating. Olive drab knit caps, giant peacoats, baggy khaki trousers, all size for much larger American soldiers from decades earlier.
And on the generally smaller Japanese Americans.
They flopped, they dangled, they hung. Jeanne calls them a band of Charlie Chaplins marooned in the California desert. Visually striking, maybe funny from afar, but deeply dehumanizing to actually wear. Another uniform marking them as other.
And this incompetence, this chaos, it directly impacts health, widespread sickness.
Constantly. First, the kids got really sick from the mass typhoid inoculations, fevers, vomiting, assembly line medicine. But the ongoing crisis was the food. Again,
What went wrong there specifically?
everything. Kitchens too small, terrible ventilation, refrigeration that couldn't handle the desert heat so food spoiled constantly. And then the cooks were internees themselves, often with zero experience cooking for hundreds. The Block 16 chef, he'd been a gardener.
Cooking for 250 people.
Yeah, recipe for disaster, spoiled food, cooked badly, led to the infamous Manzanar runs.
Constant diarrhea and stomach cramps.
A miserable, chronic problem. And when you had to rush out, you just prayed the facilities were usable. Which brings us to probably the lowest point of the physical degradation.
The latrines. The camp designs. They were standardized, right?
Yeah.
Across all 10 camps.
Yeah, built to a common master plan, which makes the design of the latrines feel almost intentional in its cruelty.
Describe them, because this detail really hits home.
It's stark. Basically, open rooms, concrete floors, long metal troughs for sinks, and then the toilets, 12 bowls set back to back in pairs, 6 pairs down the room, with absolutely no partitions between them. None.
Open. In a line.
Completely open. For a culture that deeply values personal privacy, especially around bodily functions, this was devastating.
The book focuses on Mama's experience here.
Yes, for her, described as a very modest person, just sitting down in that public space was agony, a daily humiliation she just learned to endure. It wasn't just inconvenient. It felt like a deliberate stripping away of dignity.
What smell?
Awful. The constant smell of excrement mixed with this harsh Oxydol soap stench. It permeated everything. A total assault on the senses. It was one of the most effective ways the physical environment broke down people's sense of self, their cultural norms.
But even in that degradation, there's this incredible moment of ingenuity, grace. The old woman with the cardboard box.
It's such a poignant story. This one elderly woman, desperate for a shred of privacy, finds a big Oxydol carton, drags it into the latrine, sets it up around one toilet bowl like a 3-sided screen, just cardboard.
A tiny shield against the public gaze.
A desperate, fragile shield.
Halfway.
But the interaction with Mama, that's what makes it profound.
Tell us about that.
Mama's next in line. And she and the old woman exchange these deep, formal bows from the waist, thanking each other, arigato gozaimasu. Someone offers to carry the carton back for her. The woman politely refuses. They're treating this salvaged piece of cardboard with immense respect because it represented dignity, maintaining grace in the most degrading circumstances.
And this need for privacy, it didn't just go away.
Not at all. Even when they finally put up some flimsy scrap lumber partitions later, they offered little real privacy, especially sound. So many women would wait until midnight, hoping it would be quieter, less crowded. Ironically, midnight was often the most crowded time. Everyone had the same idea. The quest for privacy was constant and mostly futile.
So this section really highlights that core conflict.
Absolutely. The entire camp setup, crowded barracks, communal meals, these open toilets. It was a direct, open insult to Japanese cultural values around privacy, values honed over generations, and they were powerless to change the structure. So again, shikata-ga-nai. They had to subordinate that deep need for privacy to the demands of cooperation just to survive.
Paradoxically, cooperation was needed to make the place livable at all.
Right, to make that desolate stretch of wasteland slowly, gradually into something they could endure. But the price was immense, the loss of the private self. #tag conclusion and final takeaways.
So we've walked through the Wakatsuki family's initial ordeal. The shock of being declared enemies, the speed of it all, that immediate cultural clash as the apricots on the rice, symbolizing so much.
Then the physical reality, the dust, the wind howling through the shacks, the systemic chaos.
And culminating in that profound daily humiliation of the latrines, the stripping away of privacy. We saw that tension, too, between the Issei way of enduring silently, shikata-ga-nai.
And the Nisei response, like Woody's practical, get-it-done approach, fixing the floor, trying to make things better.
What this memoir does, writing it 25 years later, is just, it transforms dry facts into lived, felt experience, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It takes it from historical event to human tragedy, full of specific personal costs. It forces you, the reader, to connect the dots between a government order and the smell of an open latrine, the taste of ruined rice. It's a vital personal evaluation of what happens when fear and prejudice dictate policy. It publicizes the injustice that was internalized for so long.
And thinking about those core themes, cooperation versus privacy. That tension the internees lived with daily. They had to cooperate to survive Manzanar, even if it meant sacrificing that deeply valued personal space and dignity.
Which leads to a question for you listening today. We see how those traits played out under extreme duress back then. How do they manifest now in our world?
Yeah, I mean, we live in an age overflowing with information. Constant connection, surveillance, data being bought and sold.
Exactly. Personal boundaries are constantly being pushed, digitally and sometimes physically. So when does necessary cooperation sharing information, being transparent in a crisis, tip over into sacrificing that essential private self? That dignity Mama clung to with a cardboard box.
Where do we draw those lines today in our own crises, big or small?
It's something to think about. How do we protect both community and individual dignity in the modern world?
A really powerful thought to leave us with. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into Farewell to Manzanar. If you found this exploration valuable, please do like, share, and subscribe to our channel, Book on a Shelf. And definitely stay tuned for our next episodes.